Constitution of India, Part 5, the Union, Articles 52 to 78. Article 52, the President of India. There shall be a President of India. Article 53, Executive Power of the Union. The executive power of the Union shall be vested in the President and shall be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him in accordance with this Constitution. Without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing provision, the supreme command of the defense forces of the Union shall be vested in the President, and the exercise thereof shall be regulated by law. Nothing in this article shall be deemed to transfer to the President by functions conferred by him any existing law on the government of any state or other authority, or prevent Parliament from conferring by law functions on authorities other than the President. Article 54. Election of the President. The President shall be elected by the members of an electoral college consisting of the elected members of both houses of Parliament and the elected members of the legislative assemblies of the state. Explanation. In this article and in Article 55, state includes the National Capital Territory of Delhi and the Union Territory of Pondicherry. Article 55, Manner of Election of President. As far as practicable, there shall be uniformity in the scale of representation of the different states at the election of the President. For the purpose of securing such uniformity among the states, in their say as well as parity between the states as a whole and the Union, the number of votes which each elected member of Parliament and the Legislative Assembly of each state is entitled to cast at such election shall be determined in the following manner. Every elected member of the Legislative Assembly of a state shall have as many votes as their multiples of 1000 in the quotient obtained by dividing the population of the state by the total number of the elected members of the Assembly. If, after taking the set multiples of 1000, the remainder is not less than 500, then the vote of each member referred to in surplus A shall be further increased by 1. Each elected member of either House of Parliament shall have such number of votes as may be obtained by dividing the total number of votes assigned to the members of the legislative assemblies of the states under surplus A and B by the total number of the elected members of both Houses of Parliament, functions exceeding one half being counted as 1 and other fractions being disregarded. The election of the President shall be held in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of the single transferable vote, and the voting at such election shall be by secret ballot. Explanation. In this article, the expression population means the population as ascertained at the last preceding census of which the relevant figures have been published, provided that the reference to this explanation to the last preceding census of which the relevant figures have been published shall until the relevant figures of the first census taken after the year 26 have been published be construed as the reference to 1971 census. Article 59. Conditions of President's office. The President shall not be a member of either House of Parliament or of a House of the Legislature of any state. And if a member of either House of Parliament or of a House of the Legislature of any state be elected President, he shall be deemed to have vacated his seat in that House on the date on which he enters upon his office as President. The President shall not hold any other office of profit. The President shall be entitled without payment of rent to the use of his official residences, and shall be also entitled to such emoluments, allowances, and privileges as may be determined by the Parliament by law, and until provision in that behalf is so made, such emoluments, allowances, and privileges as is specified in the second schedule. The emoluments and allowances of the President shall not be diminished during his term of office. Article 16. Oath or affirmation by the President. Every President and every person acting as President or discharging the functions of the President shall, before entering upon his office, make and subscribe in the presence of Chief Justice of India, in his absence the senior most judge of the Supreme Court available, an oath or affirmation in the following form. This is to say, I, A.B., do swear in the name of God that I will faithfully execute the office solemnly of form of President or discharge the functions of the President of India, and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and the law, that I will devote myself to the service and well-being of the people of India. Article 61. Procedure for impeachment of the President. When a President is to be impeached for violation of the Constitution, the charge shall be preferred by either House of Parliament. No such charge shall be preferred unless the proposal to prefer such a charge is contained in a resolution which has been moved after at least 14 days' notice in writing, signed by not less than 1/4 of the total number of members of the House has been given of their intention to move the resolution, and such resolution has been passed by a majority of not less than 2/3 of the total members of the House. When a charge has been so preferred by either House of Parliament, the other houses shall investigate the charge or cause the charge to be investigated, and the President shall have the right to appear and to be represented at such investigation. If, as a result of the investigation, a resolution is passed by a majority of not less than 2/3 of the total membership of the House by which the charge was investigated or caused to be investigated, declaring that the charge preferred against the President has been sustained, such resolution shall have the effect of removing the President from his office as from the date on which the resolution is so passed. Article 62. Time of holding election to fill vacancy of the office of President and the term of office of person elected to fill casual vacancy. An election to fill a vacancy caused by the expiration of term of office of President shall be completed before the expiration of the term. An election to fill a vacancy in the office of President occurring by reason of his death, resignation, or removal, or otherwise, shall be held as soon as possible after, and in no case later than 6 months from, the date of occurrence of the vacancy, and the person elected to fill the vacancy shall, subject to the provisions of Article 56, be entitled to hold office for the full term of 5 years from the date on which he enters upon his office. Article 63. Vice President of India. There shall be a Vice President of India. Article 64. The Vice President to be ex officio Chairman of the Council of States. The Vice President shall be the ex officio Chairman of the Council of the States and shall not hold any other office of profit, provided that during any period when the Vice President acts as President or discharges the functions of the President under Article 65, he shall not perform the duties of the office of Chairman of the Council of States and shall not be entitled to any salary or allowance payable to the Chairman of the Council of States under Article 97. Article 65. The Vice President to act as President or to discharge his functions during casual vacancies in the office or during the absence of President. In the event of the occurrence of any vacancy in the office of President by reason of his death, resignation, or removal, or otherwise, the Vice President shall act as President until the date on which the new President elected in accordance with the provisions of this chapter to fill such vacancy enters upon his office. When the President is unable to discharge his functions owing to absence, illness, or any other cause, the Vice President shall discharge his functions until the date on which the President resumes his duties. The Vice President shall, during and in respect of the period while he is so acting as or discharging the functions of President, have all the powers and immunities of the President and be entitled to such emoluments, allowances, and privileges as may be determined by Parliament, by law, and until the provision in that behalf is so made, such emoluments, allowances, and privileges as are specified in the second schedule. Article 66. Election of the Vice President. The Vice President shall be elected by the members of an electoral college consisting of the members of both houses of Parliament in accordance with the system of proportional representation by means of the single transferable vote, and the voting at such election shall be by secret ballot. The Vice President shall not be a member of either House of Parliament or of a House of the Legislature of any state, and if a member of either House of Parliament or of House of the Legislature of any state be elected Vice President, he shall be deemed to have vacated his seat in that House on the date on which he enters upon his office as Vice President. No person shall be eligible for election as Vice President unless he is a citizen of India, has completed the age of 35 years, and is qualified for election as a member of the Council of States. A person shall not be eligible for election as Vice President if he holds any office of profit under the Government of India or the government of any state or under any local or other authority subject to the control of any of the said governments. Explanation. For the purpose of this article, a person shall not be deemed to hold any office of profit by reason only that he is the President or Vice President of the Union or the Governor of any state or is a Minister either for the Union or any of the state. Article 67. Term of office of Vice President. The Vice President shall hold office for a term of 5 years from the date on which he enters upon this office, provided that a Vice President may, by writing under his hand addressed to the President, resign his office. A Vice President may be removed from his office by a resolution of the Council of States passed by a majority of all the then members of the Council and agreed to by the House of the People, but no resolution for the purpose of this cause shall be moved unless at least 14 days' notice has been given of the intention to move the resolution. A Vice President shall, notwithstanding the expiration of his term, continue to hold office until his successor enters upon his office. Article 68. Time of holding election to fill vacancy in the office of Vice President and the term of office of a person elected to fill casual vacancy. An election to fill a vacancy caused by the expiration of the term of office of Vice President shall be completed before the expiration of the term. An election to fill a vacancy in the office of Vice President occurring by reason of his death, resignation or removal or otherwise shall be held as soon as possible after the occurrence of the vacancy, and the person elected to fill the vacancy shall, subject to the provisions of Article 67, be entitled to hold office for the full term of 5 years from the date on which he enters upon his office. Article 69. Oath or affirmation by the Vice President. Every Vice President shall, before entering upon his office, make and subscribe before the President or some person appointed in that behalf by him an oath of or affirmation in the following form, that is to say, I, A.B., do swear in the name of God that I will bear true faith and solemnly affirm allegiance to the Constitution of India as by law established, and that I will faithfully discharge the duty upon which I am about to enter. Article 70. Discharge of President's functions in other contingencies. Parliament may make such provision as it thinks fit for the discharge of the functions of the President in any contingency not provided for in this chapter. Article 71. Matters relating to or connected with the election of a president or vice president. All doubts and disputes arising out of or in connection with the election of a president or vice president shall be inquired into and decided by the Supreme Court, whose decision shall be final. If the election of a person as president or vice president is declared void by the Supreme Court, acts done by him in the exercise and performance of the powers and duties of the office of president or vice president, as the case may be, on or before the date of the decision of the Supreme Court, shall not be invalidated by reason of that declaration. Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, Parliament may by law regulate any matter relating to or connected with the election of a president or vice president. The election of a person as president or vice president shall not be called in question on the ground of the existence of any vacancy for whatever reason among the members of the Electoral College electing him. Article 72. The power of the President to grant pardons, etc., and to suspend, remit, or commute sentences in certain cases. The President shall have the power to grant pardons, reprieves, respites, or remissions of punishment, or to suspend, remit, or commute the sentence of any person convicted of any offense. In all cases where the punishment or sentence is by a court-martial. In all cases where the punishment or sentence is for the offense against any law relating to a matter to which the executive power of the Union extends. In all cases where the sentence is a sentence of death. Nothing in subclause A of clause 1 shall affect the power conferred by law on any officer of the armed forces of the Union to suspend, remit, or commute a sentence passed by a court-martial. Nothing in subclause C of clause 1 shall affect the power to suspend, remit, or commute a sentence of death exercisable by the governor of a state under any law for the time being in force. Article 73. Extent of executive power of the Union. Subject to the provisions of this Constitution, the executive power of the Union shall extend to the matter with respect to which Parliament has power to make laws, and to the exercise of such rights, authority, and jurisdiction as are exercisable by the Government of India by virtue of any treaty or agreement, provided that the executive power referred to in subclause A shall not, save as expressly provided in this Constitution or in any law made by Parliament, extend in any state to matters with respect to which the legislature of the state has also power to make laws. Until otherwise provided by Parliament, a state and any officer or authority of a state may, notwithstanding anything in this article, continue to exercise in matters with respect to which Parliament has power to make laws for that state such executive power or functions as the state or officer or authority thereof could exercise immediately before the commencement of this Constitution. Article 74. Council of Ministers to aid and advise President. There shall be a Council of Ministers with the Prime Minister at the head to aid and advise the President, who shall, in the exercise of his functions, act in accordance with such advice, provided that the President may require the Council of Ministers to reconsider such advice, either generally or otherwise, and the President shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. The question whether any, and if so what, advice has tendered by ministers to the President shall not be inquired into in any court. Article 75. Other provisions as to ministers. The Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President, and the other ministers shall be appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. The total number of ministers, including the Prime Minister, in the Council of Ministers shall not exceed 15% of the total number of members of the House of People. 1b. A member of either House of Parliament belonging to any political party who is disqualified for being a member of that House under paragraph 2 of 10th schedule shall also be disqualified to be appointed as the minister under clause 1 for the duration of the period commencing from the date of his disqualification till the date on which the term of his office as such member would expire, or where he contest by election to either House of Parliament before the expiry of such period till the date on which he is declared elected, whichever is earlier. Conduct of government business. Article 77. Conduct of business of the Government of India. All executive action of the Government of India shall be expressed to be taken in the name of President. Orders and other instruments made and executed in the name of President shall be authenticated in such manner as may be specified in Rule 1 to be made by the President, and the validity of an order or instrument which is so authenticated shall not be called in question on the ground that it is not an order or instrument made or executed by the President. The President shall make rules for the more convenient transaction of the business of the Government of India and for the allocation among ministers of the said business. Article 78. Duties of Prime Minister as respects the furnishing of information to the President, etc. It shall be the duty of the Prime Minister to communicate to the President all decisions of the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union and proposals for legislation. To furnish such information related to the administration of the affairs of the Union and proposals for legislation as the President may call for, and if the President so requires, to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by the Minister, but which has not been considered by the Council.